Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. You're listening to the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. Hey, it's a show where pounds are shed, disease is dead, and where you can be set free from your health problems. I'm your host, Dr. Aaron Ernst, and I love that today, especially of all days, I get to spend this Saturday and guide you to living life to your fullest health potential. We're going to share an incredible message today, and it's going to hopefully set free those of you who deal with high blood sugar. If you're taking metformin, glucophage, Actos, Javandia, any of these more common sugar medications, I'm going to crack the nut behind one type of a cause for diabetes, type 2, that most people do not talk about, and it is the connection between toxins, both organic and inorganic, heavy metals, and insulin resistance. And I'm here to share something with you. It is sort of a hidden cause, hidden in that most of our primary medical physicians aren't investigating the connection between your toxicity load and the likelihood of you developing diabetes, or if you are one of those millions of Americans who have it, what could be the answer for your diabetes lies deep inside your cell tissues and getting the toxins out. Did you know that it's been estimated that more than 50% of Americans over the age of 65 have type 2 diabetes? 50%! That's literally like by the time you get to 65, flip a coin and it's either heads yes or tails no. And I find it too coincidental that diabetes has been climbing so exponentially over the last couple of years. But if you also correlate what else has been climbing exponentially, it is our exposure to toxins. So you guys have asked multiple questions over the last couple of weeks about diabetes, type 2, and assistance with that. So I'm throwing together this show as a way to break free, but looking at it holistically from an area you probably have never addressed. We're going to talk about the top 10 toxins that you've been exposed to that may be causing some insulin resistance, making your sugars elevated. And I'm going to break I'll call it the dogma behind this concept of how the insulin receptor can become clogged with toxins. And it's as simple as this. The interference at the hormone receptor stops insulin from being able to land. And it's why so many type 2 diabetics have elevated insulin and elevated blood sugars, yet the doctors will often scratch their heads going, well, don't understand. If insulin's high, your sugar should be low. Why is this all? And they'll just say it's genetic or it's diet or it's your lack of motivation and inspiration to change your life, when in fact, it's just a chemical toxin overload. So this is your health hour, and our show exists for a specific reason. You get to ask a health question, we answer. So if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, visit AskDrErnst.com. On the top right-hand corner is a contact button. You can send over your question. You can submit a show topic, whatever you'd like us to address directly there, absolutely for free. And don't forget that we live stream our show every week on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter with the handle Ask Dr. Ernst. So just simply visit facebook.com/AskDrErnst. You can engage. Same thing with YouTube and Twitter. We love the conversation. We love the connection. And today, we're going to break apart this concept called type 2 diabetes and its connection to toxicity. Now, I think you would recognize we live in a world where toxins are elevating every single day. We're finding more and more and more. In fact, the Environmental Working Group found out that the average American right now today has 91 chemical toxins in their body. No matter if you know it or not, on average, you've got 91 of them there. Some people in this study had as many as 165. I mean, this is an exorbitant amount of toxins. And many of those have been related to health effects, including obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and even cancer. And on top of that, our lifestyle as a whole, our diet is highly toxic. Processed and refined foods, industrial seed oils, canola, corn, Wesson, etc., high fructose corn syrup, and even the so-called healthy foods like grains and soy all have a tremendous toxic effect on the human body. And I'd like to say that if you've thought this concept of diabetes is you inherited it genetically, we're going to talk about how that's not necessarily true and how toxins may turn those genes on. And if you think it's about caloric intake, if I could just decrease how much food I eat, maybe my sugars would actually respond. So many people have done that, yet they see still an elevation in their sugars. Toxins are invisible. You're not going to be able to see these, and they are an unappreciated cause of type 2 diabetes and potentially even type 1. So if you're that person who has cleaned up your diet, you've done some sort of change to your lifestyle, but yet your sugars are still elevated or you've been struggling with type 2 diabetes, I'm going to introduce you today to something called the diabetogen. Diabetogen, known triggers that can create insulin resistance a toxin that gets inside the receptor for insulin and basically blockades the ability for insulin to land. See, in a perfect world, those of you on our live stream, you can see this, the cell membranes in your body have these receptors for insulin, and the hormone lands, sends a signal to what's called the glucose transport channel, and sugar flows into the cell, is burned through the citric acid cycle, and it makes energy, it makes functionality. Well, here's what could be an unspoken cause of your type 2 diabetes. Instead of the insulin landing on the receptor, there's something else in there. We're going to talk about the top 10 chemicals that get inside that receptor and stop insulin from landing. So therefore, the channels aren't open, your sugars elevate, and your body gets stuck. And that is called toxin-induced insulin resistance. So don't forget, in 2 weeks, I'm hosting a webinar the first Saturday of May, which is the 1st, at 10 a.m. in the morning. It is for those of you who struggle with thyroid conditions. You know, it's estimated that about 50 to 60% of women over the age of 40 have low energy, fatigue, bloating, gas, brittle nails, dry hair, etc. And it's possible that it's coming from a thyroid problem. So if you've been struggling with a thyroid issue, May 1st, 10 a.m. in the comfort of your home, absolutely free. It's a webinar to break back from that. 704-906-2094 is the number. It's the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. We'll be right back.
Ever been to the beach and you want to bottle up the feeling of relaxation and take it home with you? Lake Norman Salt Spa offers just that. In just one 30-minute session, you are immersed in a climate-controlled salt room with pure pharmaceutical-grade mineral salt, similar to sea salt. One 30-minute session is like going to the beach for the entire day. You not only receive the anti-aging benefits of the salt like you would at the beach, but you're also benefiting from recharging your body's natural battery. The standard American lifestyle exposes you to toxins and stress, which drains your battery, accelerating the aging process and developing disease. You can recharge your battery by surrounding yourself in an environment that is negatively charged, like mineral salt. The more negative ions in your system, the better you feel, and most importantly, the better you heal. On top of all these amazing benefits, the therapy is done in a completely sterile environment. Call the Lake Norman Salt Spa today for 50% off your first session. Call 704-997-5890. That's 704-997-5890.
Sterling believes in the science of CBD. Here's 3 great reasons to choose Sterling CBD. Reason number 1, Sterling is pure CBD. Sterling CBD is made from pure CBD isolate. We remove all the THC and unnecessary compounds, leaving only pure CBD. Reason number 2, backed by science. The U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, USADA, has approved CBD for U.S. Olympic athletes, but they only approve pure CBD, like Sterling CBD. Reason number 3, our organic hemp is FDA approved. At Sterling CBD, we quality control test at every manufacturing stage. We start with organic hemp plants and track them to our FDA-registered food-grade extraction facility. Our pure CBD products include capsules, isolates, lotions, and oils. We even have CBD pet products. You can find Sterling CBD at drernstscbd.com. Use the coupon code Dr. Ernst for 20% off your order.
How come there are people who drink a pint of whiskey a day for 20, 30 years, and at the end of it only 20 or 30% become cirrhotic? What happened to the others? And we speculated, we hypothesized, it's the enzyme, alcoholic dehydrogenase made by the stomach. Maybe it's different, maybe it's genes, maybe it's polymorphism. Mm-hmm. The answer appears to be coffee. If you drink that much alcohol and drink 1 cup of regular coffee a day, 20% reduction in alcoholic cirrhosis risk, 2 cups 40%, 4 cups 80%. It's not a license to drink heavily.
Right.
And drink coffee and protect your liver. You know, you could still get Korsakoff psychosis, cardiomyopathy, pancreatitis, kill people on the road, ruin your marriage, but it does protect the liver. It's pretty amazing.
Here's a secret your grocery store does not want you to know. At ThriveMarket.com, get up to 50% off all your organic groceries, delivered to your door for free. Shop organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, and paleo. And get a free jar of coconut oil. Thrive Market. Wholesome products, wholesale prices. Get your free coconut oil today only at ThriveMarket.com.
So this is the difference between biodynamic and conventional farming. Let's look at the difference in vineyards here. you have very green grass and herbs and life growing, and then dead soil over here. So this is a conventional vineyard where they spray pesticides, they use a lot of tractors to pull up the soil. This soil is dead, it's dry. There's no life. This is Klaus's vineyard. It's farmed biodynamically. Everything is picked by hand and they don't use any chemicals. So there's life, there's green grass, everything grows. This is the big disparity between conventional farming and biodynamic farming, and you can see it perfectly side by side. We prefer this wine, of course, because this wine is dead. There's nothing living in it.
Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. You're listening to the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. I'm your host, Dr. Aaron Ernst. And hey, it's a show where pounds are shed, disease is dead, and where you can be set free from your health problems when you become your own doctor. When you learn and take responsibility to figure out what is the root underlying cause of your health condition, then you can start to solve it on your own. And the benefit of that is your body can heal by itself. So today we're talking about I'll call it a known topic in the functional space, but often an unknown topic within the medical space. The idea that type 2 diabetes may actually be caused by toxin exposure instead of your genetics, or instead of your bad diet, or instead of your poor lifestyle, etc. Because so many people have met with us, especially my team and myself, and said, well, I changed my diet, I started working out, I switched to different supplements, and my sugars still aren't coming down. So I'm doing everything right, but I'm not seeing the results that I was looking for. And so what could be that underlying trigger for the elevated blood sugars that we see in many diabetics? It's the toxins that we're associated to in our life. One thing I see for certain, we're living in a world that is becoming more and more and more toxic. In fact, it's been estimated that the number of toxins that are being produced new each year are going to exceed the previous year's production. So we have an exponential growth. And what's going to start happening is we're going to begin overburdening our body. And there was a recent study done by the Environmental Working Group, and this came as a shock to me. They found the average American, again, has 91 chemical toxins flowing around in their body. Many of these are known to not only cause heart disease and diabetes and even cancer, but we're now learning, and the research is starting to become evidence with this, is that toxins can physically inflame the cell membranes, physically block the receptors for your hormones. And that could be insulin, it could be thyroid, it could be testosterone, it could be estrogen. So when a lot of us are diagnosed with a hormone problem, diabetes is an insulin issue, then it could be that the actual root cause of the problem is not the hormone itself, but therefore the interference at the communication. So let's talk briefly about how does your body actually make things work. So in a perfect world, and please, if you're watching our live stream, head over there. I'm holding up some infographics that I've drawn and designed. You can do that on Facebook.com/AskDrErnst, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Every cell inside of your body has a membrane that protects the outside environment from the inside environment. It's made of fat, and it also has other components to it, proteins and lipids and cholesterol. The basic idea is you have an inner cellular environment that's separate from the external cellular environment. Now, your body uses chemical messengers called hormones, in this instance, insulin, to tell the cell what to do. So as sugar starts to elevate in the outside environment, in your blood, etc., insulin is produced, it lands on the receptor opens what's called a glucose transport, and sugar flows into the cell. The purpose of sugar is to be burned through what's called the citric acid cycle, produce energy, produce functionality, make things happen, turn genes on or off based upon what needs to be done, and also bring a level of health and healing to the cell. Now, what toxins can do is they tend to stick to the hormone receptors, or they get inside the membranes and they gum up the transporters. So In the instance of sugar, when insulin is trying to land on the receptor, it physically can't because the receptor is blocked or blunted, if you will, by the toxin. So therefore, insulin doesn't land. As a result, the channel never opens, so as sugars start climbing in the external environment, your blood, the cell starves for sugar, it starves for energy, it has decreased function, and here's where we get symptomatology. Weakness, tiredness, fatigue, inability to burn fat. It leads to elevations in cellular toxins and tissues such that we see elevations in other markers, blood pressure, triglycerides. You see where I'm going with this? Cholesterol starts to elevate. And the whole point of it being there's one simple interference. Now, there's a group of toxins that are known to do this, and I've got the top 10 list, and I'm going to go through this, decently quick, but also in enough time to help you understand what it is. Most of them are broken down into two categories, heavy metals and then other organic or non-organic pollutants. The number one heavy metal that you may never associate with type 2 diabetes of all things is actually arsenic. Now, you might be going seriously, where on earth am I getting exposure to arsenic? Well, arsenic is a chemical that's naturally found in a lot of different food products, also in a lot of different protein powders and in things like chicken and rice and supplements, etc. It's typically found in either the soil that the foods grow in the air that you're breathing, in various oils that you're consuming. So this is where it gets difficult if you're doing a lot of vegetable-based oils or seed-based oils, canola, corn, Wesson, etc. And it's often found in a lot of the water that we drink that can be contaminated. Now, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration currently does not set any limit for the amount of arsenic that's found in our food, which is why we often find it in a lot of food products. Again, the most common of all is rice and rice-based protein powders, various non-organic sources of chicken because they eat a lot of grains and rice and corn, etc. Believe it or not, apple juice and protein powders have all been found to have higher than allowable amounts of arsenic inside of it. And the issue with arsenic is that it also can directly interfere with the receptor. Now, most of you have probably never had your arsenic levels tested. It's not a common test when you go to your physical with your doctor. So I'm going to show you a lab that we run for our clients. It's through a group called Doctors Data, and it's a phenomenal test, very easy to do. This is a sample report, and what you'll see here is it checks everything from aluminum to antimony to arsenic. And in this sample, this person was extremely high arsenic toxic, and they also had a lot of uranium. And so these are toxic heavy metals. So if you have type 2 diabetes and you've been struggling and you're taking your medications, you're not seeing any changes, you've been shifting your diet, maybe you started exercising, I'd like to wake you up to the idea that you may have these chemicals inside of your body. Scientists have found that exposure to arsenic specifically impairs glucose tolerance, means it changes the ability for your pancreas to secrete insulin, and it also blocks the ability for it to land at the receptor, creating what's called insulin resistance. Again, where do we find arsenic? Well, it's mostly in our water, it's in the air that we breathe, it's in the food that we eat, and you have to be extremely careful because a lot of times it's found in healthy food products. Arsenic is also used, as coincidentally, in some pharmaceutical agents, some pigments, dyes, pesticides, some wood preservatives, and insecticides that are often sprayed onto other plants or to prevent pests around your house. So the easiest way to reduce your exposure is making sure, number one, you go completely organic, you're eating nothing but whole foods, clean vegetables, limiting your grains like corn and rice, etc., and make sure you get tested at least. Another heavy metal that is involved heavily with type 2 diabetes is mercury. Mercury has been found to actually produce a response where it blocks the insulin production within the pancreatic cell. And a study that was published in Environmental Research found that there was a massive connection between the exposure you have to mercury and the amount and type of type 2 diabetes you have. There are some studies doing tests on urine of people that have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and they're finding heavy correlations with mercury excreted in their urine. The number one source of mercury is typically found in dental fillings that you have. So if you have a silver or an amalgam filling, any sort of exposure that you've had to mercury through contaminated fish, typically the larger fish, tuna, swordfish, shark, mackerel, the big fish. And then also today, we have mercury actually found in some of the fluorescent light bulbs that we use that are highly efficient. So if you've seen those light bulbs that have the spinning sort of cycle, it's a small fluorescent bulb just turned into a bunch of little circular tubes to create a light bulb. Those have mercury inside of them. And believe it or not, if the bulb can sometimes crack or break open, then the mercury vapor gets into the air and you can inhale it. To reduce your mercury exposure, number one, we need to make sure that, of course, you're not consuming fish that are typically high in mercury, which are always those large fish. Again, I know it's tough, but an ahi tuna, while it might be a great steak to have at some specialty restaurant, very, very high in mercury, as is king mackerel, tilefish, shark, and swordfish. The larger the fish, the more mercury, just simply because of the bioaccumulation effect. And what does the research show? Well, yet again, what does mercury do? It has the ability to get in and bind to the receptor, block the insulin response, and we get this toxin-induced insulin resistance, therefore an elevation in blood sugars and blood insulin. Cadmium is another one. This is a heavy metal that's naturally released when we tend to burn things. So like a lot of burning of plastics and metals and pigments and things, typically more how we smelt or burn our trash in the the industrial processes that take care of the trash that we excrete through our house. It's also found sometimes in certain plants, including rice and cereal grains, typically found heavy into some tobacco products. So we often find that people who smoke have a higher exposure to cadmium, and also then they have a higher likelihood of having type 2 diabetes. Listen to this. There was a study that was published in 2017 that found that for every 1 microgram of cadmium that was added to the human body, it produced a 16% increased risk in your likelihood of having type 2 diabetes. It was concluded that exposure to cadmium is significantly associated with an elevated risk factor of diabetes. And where can we test for that? The exact same test that we do can look to see how much cadmium is in the body. It's a very toxic heavy metal, sometimes doesn't come up by itself, and there are ways that you can actually detox, which we'll talk about in a moment. Another metal that's also prevalent in a lot of our bodies is something called nickel. Nickel, of course, is used in a lot of things like jewelry and batteries and certain ceramics. The International Journal of Epidemiology found that there was a heavy increased correlation between urinary nickel output and those people who had insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, so much so that it was elevated to, the prevalence of nickel was correlated to a 35% elevation within type 2 diabetes. So if you have nickel in your body, you have a more likelihood of having, again, the insulin resistance. We have more metals and more toxins that we're going to expose to you during our next segment. And if you're listening right now, I want to let you know that I'm hosting a webinar on May 1st. It's Saturday in about 2 weeks. It is designed to deal with this pandemic that we're seeing behind thyroid disease. More and more women and more men are struggling to keep their thyroid hormones under control. And the common solution of Synthroid, levothyroxine, even Natrethroid and Armothroid is often only fixing the symptoms, but we still see the underlying root causes present. We're going to discuss how to fix this underlying cause, how to diagnose it, and break free from thyroid health issues, including those medications. That's on Saturday, May 1st, 10 a.m. in the comfort of your home. The webinar is free, and the number is 704-906-2094. Again, 704-906-2094. It's the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Ever been to the beach and you want to bottle up the feeling of relaxation and take it home with you? Lake Norman Salt Spa offers just that. In just one 30-minute session, you are immersed in a climate-controlled salt room with pure pharmaceutical-grade mineral salt, similar to sea salt. One 30-minute session is like going to the beach for the entire day. You not only receive the anti-aging benefits of the salt like you would at the beach, but you're also benefiting from recharging your body's natural battery. The standard American lifestyle exposes you to toxins and stress, which drains your battery, accelerating the aging process and developing disease. You can recharge your battery by surrounding yourself in an environment that is negatively charged, like mineral salt. The more negative ions in your system, the better you feel, and most importantly, the better you heal. On top of all these amazing benefits, the therapy is done in a completely sterile environment. Call the Lake Norman Salt Spa today for 50% off your first session. Call 704-997-5890. That's 704-997-5890.
Today, Monticello has a population of 126. It's a small enough town, everybody knows everybody. There are no stoplights in Monticello, so if you're driving too fast, you're going to miss it. But if you happen to turn in, you're going to run across a great Protestant church that has services every Sunday morning. You can go to the post office, and the postmaster's name is Randy. He's always glad to see you. Everybody in town knows everybody. When you walk in the bank, you're called to by your first name. You're not just an account number. We've started the business there 10 years ago, and very slowly, surely, we've built up a business that actually reaches out and touches all 50 states and several foreign countries. At the turn of the century, diabetes was almost non-existent. But if you turn the clock up 100 years to 2000, we have a runaway epidemic of diabetes. When I went to school, nobody had ADD. I mean, you look at the modern school today, you've got kids taking medicine, and this is all driven off a diet. And it's so simple just to get back to the foundations of good, healthy diet, and by consuming, grass-fed beef, organic vegetables, getting away from processed foods. This is a paddock move. These animals are coming into this paddock. This has been at rest for probably 30 days, and as soon as they come in here, you can watch their habits. They're going to put their nose down. They're going right after high quality forage.
What I've done here today is give them a fresh strip of grass controlled by this tape over here. This has given them a very consistent ration from day to day. This is an example of what they're getting to eat right now.
But you can just observe the humor of the animals. This is the happiest time of the day. I call it ice cream and cookies. Looking down on the ground, on the landscape here, we have a lot of clovers. We've got annual forages, perennial forages, and a lot of the native forages have come back. The blue stems, the Indian grasses, they're much more prevalent in June and July, but the old seed stock is here. But if we manage the landscape like it should be managed, 95% of the public has never heard of CLA, but it's one of the best kept secrets in agriculture in these grazing animals. You get it from grass-fed beef, grass-fed lamb, grass-fed bison. And you might ask, what does CLA do? A very unique compound, one of the best things you could consume from the standpoint of cancer. It's very effective against cancer. It's very effective against diabetes. Research out of Purdue has documented that. A lot of animal trials, now human trials. And most interestingly, it actually helps the body put on lean muscle and reduce fat. 90% of the cattle in this country or more end up going into a commercial feedlot where they're slowly converted from a grazing diet over to a starch diet. When you fill the animal full of starch, you completely change the chemistry of the finished product, and you end up with an omega-6-3 ratio 20-1, 18-1, and the CLA production is almost nil because of the starch diet.
I don't think that you can beat this example right here where the sun's energy is producing this grass, and this grass is producing these cattle without having any antibiotics, growth promotants, or grain fed to them.
Grass-fed beef is a unique opportunity for you to take control of your health. I've taken control of my health over the last 10 years. I feel better, I feel stronger. Our animals eat right, so you can too.
Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. Welcome back. We'll call that the Happy Back. You're listening to the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. I'm your host, Dr. Aaron Ernst. Love that we're here today to take an opportunity and teach, educate, and inspire you. not only to solving some health issues, but we're dealing with an epidemic that is becoming more and more prevalent. It's estimated that diabetes is going to climb somewhere between the neighborhood of 20 to 30 million people across the world within the next 20 years. Expenses for type 2 diabetes are climbing. Most of us are getting frustrated with having to stick our fingers and take medications, etc. A recent report I read said by the time we get to be age 65, it's a 50-50 chance that you're going to have diabetes in the U.S. So I look at this and say, wait a minute, if this condition is climbing so drastically, rather than coming up with new medications or different ways of controlling symptoms, what if we try to figure out what the correlation and the cause is? What else has been climbing in the same duration that could maybe potentially be causing the elevation that we're seeing in type 2 diabetes, which we also see, by the way, in obesity and in heart disease and in other major chronic illnesses. And it has to do, in my opinion, with the connection between our exposure to toxins and how that puts a burden onto the human body to be able to regulate hormones. Again, if you've been tuning in since the top of the hour, specifically for insulin, we know that normal function is the hormone lands on the receptor of your cell. That receptor opens up something called a glucose transport channel. Sugar flows through. The sugar gets into the cell, so it lowers your blood sugar response, meaning you're burning it. It's in the cell now. It's turned into energy, and then your cells perform normal function: health, healing, regulation, secretion of other hormones, etc. Burning fat, everything you want, right? All the vitality you're looking for comes from normal, healthy cellular function. Well, some recent research has come out now showing that certain toxins have this affinity or a stickiness to get inside the insulin receptor and therefore blunt it or block it. Think of it again like as if I gave you the key to my house. Well, you should be able to put the key in the door, turn it, and open it and go in. But if someone came along and put a different key in and broke off that key so that now the lock is blocked because it has this metallic... That was interesting. Because it has this metallic device inside of it, well, your key now will not be able to go in, and therefore you can't get inside because you can't unlock the door, and you're stuck outside. Do you see the analogy? If insulin can't land on the receptor, then the sugar channels aren't opened, then insulin starts to climb because your body keeps trying to slam that receptor. Well, open it up, open it up. Sugars elevate, and the cause is not your diet necessarily, not your lack of exercise, but the fact that there are chemical toxins potentially bound to the receptor, blunting this. And so here's the beauty of it. If you can detox that receptor, get those toxins out, now whoosh, everything happens. And this is how I have seen some clients reverse type 2 diabetes in 60 days, 90 days, sometimes 6 months, etc. It's all based upon what do you have. We also mentioned that there is a test that we run on our patients, and I'd highly recommend you look into it. It's from Doctor's Data, and it's a heavy metals profile to look for a lot of these: aluminum, arsenic, antimony, cadmium, lead, mercury, all these known toxins that can interfere with the receptor. So if your report comes back looking like this, and if you're listening online, or watching our stream, you can see it, but if you're tuning in just through the airways, elevations across the board in multiple metals, this is a potential root cause of what could be this person's type 2 diabetes. So the term is called toxin-induced insulin resistance, and unfortunately, a lot of our healthcare providers are not paying attention to it simply because it's not conventional therapy or care to remove toxins. I hate to say it, but the medications that many of you are taking to control your sugars themselves are toxins, and they can cause irritation and damage to kidneys, intestines, and the liver. So we discussed that the number one sort of issue is heavy metals, everything from arsenic to mercury to cadmium to nickel, which again, you can get tested for to see how much of them you have inside of your body. But one metal that's a metal that I want to talk about that's also not a metal is something called ferritin. Ferritin is, in my opinion, a major player with type 2 diabetes simply because it does two things. It's an elevation in an inflammatory response. So we know that the more toxic you are, the more inflamed you become. We know the more inflamed you are, the bigger issues you have with not only just cellular repair, but hormone communication, joint issues, everything from just how we feel. Inflammation has been connected to obesity and heart disease and diabetes, but the main reason for that is what ferritin does. Now, ferritin is a form of an iron molecule bound to a protein, typically because of an overload within how your body detoxes iron through the liver. There's a growing body of research that has shown elevated serum ferritin beyond the normal range is associated directly with insulin resistance, abnormal blood sugars, metabolic syndrome, and type 2 diabetes. Now, listen, this research is like within the last year or two, maybe even 3 or 4. We're now discovering that serum ferritin is a biomarker that can be used by physicians or holistic doctors to determine the amount of inflammation you have, the amount of liver toxicity you have, and if your body has this toxin-induced insulin resistance. Ferritin for a male should be under 150. Ferritin for a female should be under 100. So something as simple as a really quick blood test could determine, do you have ferritin toxicity? Something as simple as a urine or hair test could tell us, do you have metal toxicity? And if these come back positive, now you have something that we would term toxin-induced insulin resistance if your blood sugars are elevated and if you've been struggling to solve this. So I think you can see now we have this plethora of evidence showing that this is what it is. This is the potential source of your type 2 diabetes if you've been trying everything right. So what I need to do now, and of course, look at this, a commercial break is already on its corner, is show you how do we solve this? How do we get these metals out of our body? How do we open up the process of detoxification? So we're going to do that. And I'm also opening up again our call lines. We had a tremendous number of responses. Apparently, thyroid is a big deal, not just for maybe you, but for a loved one or a family member. So if you know someone that's struggling with a thyroid issue, or if you're currently taking Synthroid, Levothyroxine, or Armourthroid, I'm going to share with you in 2 weeks how to solve that thyroid epidemic. Okay, it's my thyroid webinar. It's Saturday, May 1st, 10 a.m. in the comfort of your home. And I'm going to break through the common myths behind what thyroid is and show you how to solve the underlying root cause, which is almost always an autoimmune disease. Again, the webinar is free. The number to call is 704-906-2094. It's the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. We'll be right back.
Ever been to the beach and you want to bottle up the feeling of relaxation and take it home with you? Lake Norman Salt Spa offers just that. In just one 30-minute session, you are immersed in a climate-controlled salt room with pure pharmaceutical-grade mineral salt, similar to sea salt. One 30-minute session is like going to the beach for the entire day. You not only receive the anti-aging benefits of the salt like you would at the beach, but you're also benefiting from recharging your body's natural battery. The standard American lifestyle exposes you to toxins and stress, which drains your battery, accelerating the aging process and developing disease. You can recharge your battery by surrounding yourself in an environment that is negatively charged, like mineral salt. The more negative ions in your system, the better you feel, and most importantly, the better you heal. On top of all these amazing benefits, the therapy is done in a completely sterile environment. Call the Lake Norman Salt Spa today for 50% off your first session. Call 704-997-5890. That's 704-997-5890.
Sterling believes in the science of CBD. Here's 3 great reasons to choose Sterling CBD. Reason number 1, Sterling is pure CBD. Sterling CBD is made from pure CBD isolate. We remove all the THC and unnecessary compounds, leaving only pure CBD. Reason number 2, backed by science. The U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, USADA, has approved CBD for U.S. Olympic athletes, but they only approve pure CBD, like Sterling CBD. Reason number 3, our organic hemp is FDA approved. At Sterling CBD, we quality control test at every manufacturing stage. We start with organic hemp plants and track them to our FDA-registered food-grade extraction facility. Our pure CBD products include capsules, isolates, lotions, and oils. We even have CBD pet products. You can find Sterling CBD at drernstscbd.com. Use the coupon code Dr. Ernst for 20% off your order.
So this is the difference between biodynamic and conventional farming. Let's look at the difference in vineyards here. You have very green grass and herbs and life growing, and then dead soil over here. So this is a conventional vineyard where they spray pesticides, they use a lot of tractors to pull up the soil. This soil is dead, it's dry. There's no life. This is Klaus's vineyard. It's farmed biodynamically. Everything is picked by hand and they don't use any chemicals. So there's life, there's green grass, everything grows. This is the big disparity between conventional farming and biodynamic farming, and you can see it perfectly side by side. We prefer this wine, of course, because this wine is dead. There's nothing living in it.
What if we told you coffee was good for you?
Coffee is the single highest source of antioxidants in the Western diet. More antioxidants than kale, more antioxidants than 70% dark chocolate, and more antioxidants than blueberries.
In fact, what if we told you that coffee is really good for you?
Research shows that 3 to 5 cups of coffee per day dramatically enhances performance in high-intensity exercise, improves memory, reaction times, and overall cognitive function, decreases risk of depression, promotes weight loss by boosting metabolic rates, reduces risk of type 2 diabetes up to 40%, decreases risk of liver cancer up to 71%, reduces risk of Parkinson's up to 30%, and decreases risk of Alzheimer's up to 65%. Overall, coffee drinkers live longer. People who drink 3 to 5 cups of coffee per day have about a 15% lower risk of premature mortality compared to people who don't drink coffee.
Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. You're listening to the Ask Dr. Aaron Show. Hey, it's the show where pounds are shed, disease is dead, and where you can be set free from your health problems. I'm your host, Dr. Aaron Ernst, and today we've been discussing a topic of toxins and their connection to what's called insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, and a new term that's been put out in some research saying that there is growing evidence that there could be what's called toxin-induced insulin resistance as being the root cause behind type 2 diabetes, or a cause that you may not have addressed. What we mean by toxin-induced resistance is normally the insulin response, the hormone called insulin, which helps sugar inside of your cells, lands on a receptor, and then once the receptor is activated, a sugar channel called glucose transport opens, and that moves sugar into the cell. So what happens is elevations in blood sugar externally should naturally shuttle through this hormone response to get the sugars inside the cell so they're burned for energy, lowering your outside blood sugar response. Some people, though, despite fasting and changing their diet and exercising, have said, well, I just can't seem to get my sugars down. And they'll be diagnosed or labeled as having type 2 diabetes, depending upon their age and when it onsets. And what could be happening is the whole system is just being blocked by one thing: toxins bound to the insulin receptor or within the cell membrane clogging up the glucose transport, and therefore insulin climbs, sugar climbs, and the cells themselves starve for energy and functionality, and we end up with all the conditions associated with diabetes: obesity, heart disease, even issues with high blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, etc. So knowing that these toxins are present, what are the most common that we've discussed? Well, we talked about heavy metals and their connection: arsenic, mercury, cadmium, nickel. We spent a little bit of time discussing ferritin and how it's a version of iron that becomes toxified when bound to a protein in your liver, partly also because the liver itself is overly burdened and toxic. And as ferritin starts to climb, guess what it does? It gets in and blocks the receptor for insulin, thus producing insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. The unique thing is there's a plethora of research showing elevations in both the excretion of these, so elevated amounts in your urine and or your hair, which is a way that we can test for this to see if you have it. So, of course, if you're watching our live stream, you can see this is everything from aluminum all the way down to titanium being tested, and you see these 2 or 3 that are elevated, positive tests for toxins. You can do it with a blood exam. We can look directly for ferritin and discover how much ferritin is in your blood. If you're a male and your ferritin's over 100, positive for ferritin toxicity and inflammation. If you're a female and it's over 100, same thing. Male 150, female 100. Ferritin is by far the most well-studied biomarker in its relation to metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. And the challenge that I've seen today is a lot of people don't have that as part of their annual physical. We'll get our glucose checked, we'll get our insulin checked, we'll get our sugars, triglycerides, cholesterols, but often when we're looking for cause agents like toxins, those are often overlooked. So how do we deal with these toxins? Well, listen, I hate to say it, but I have even tons more, but we're running out of time today for this. So we have BPA, PCBs, PAHs, phthalates, dioxins. Look, there's over 70,000 known chemical toxins, but what I want you to kind of get a sense of is how toxic are you? And one way of knowing your relationship and level of toxicity has to do with the involvement of what your health is doing. Let me give you a reference so you can just get a sense of how do you know if you're toxic. Number one, if you have lower than normal HDL cholesterol, then there's a high likelihood that you have toxicity. If you've had increased risk for blood clots or you have atherosclerosis, if you have sleep apnea, there's major connections between toxicities and that. If you have inflammation of your liver or cirrhosis, elevated triglycerides, high blood pressure, elevated blood sugars, type 2 diabetes we've been discussing, an increase in abdominal fat around your abdomen, if you're noticing changes in normal functionality, if you're urinating more frequently, if you're getting lightheaded, if you have heartburn, if you have bloating or constipation, if you have arrhythmias, listen, all of those are connected to toxicity, and yet all of those are also connected to insulin resistance. So what we see is this combination of how one feeds another, and therefore we end up with the symptoms that we deal with. And what's medicine's solution for this, unfortunately? Well, they'll have a medication for every single one. So instead, why don't we go down the route of cleaning out our diet, using certain supplements and potential chelators or detoxifiers to just let the body naturally eliminate itself. Now, I will say sometimes this can become quite complicated. If your labs come back with uranium or arsenic or aluminum, you're probably going to need to seek some assistance from either a holistic physician or a naturopathic doctor or someone who can guide you through this. This is what I do in my clinic here in Charlotte. If you're looking for help with that, askdrernst.com. You can click on the either request a free consultation, we can discuss your current health issue, or you can ping us a question directly and we can help you connect that way. Now, the best way to deal with toxins is to understand that when it's in regards to insulin resistance, we have to help open up that insulin receptor. We have to get that toxin off and allow insulin to land so that that sugar response can happen. Certain supplements have been shown to activate that insulin response and help this. So I'd like you to try these if you are currently a type 2 diabetic, or if you're someone who's looking to lower their blood sugar reactions. Chromium piconolate. 200 micrograms of that 3 times a day with food has been shown in research to actually increase the sensitivity of that receptor, help the toxin to come off, and let insulin land directly to it. There were studies published in Diabetes Technology and Therapeutics. Listen to this. 13 different studies reported significant improvement in both blood sugar control and also reactions to where insulin became more active. It increased the sensitivity with people that use chromium piconolate as a supplement. Other incomes that were positive from it is they also discovered reduced cholesterol, reduced triglycerides, and also better management of people who were taking medications that often saw these major ups and downs within their blood sugars. Cinnamon is the second one that can actually help to enhance the receptor's response and detox the insulin reaction. It has the ability to help lower blood sugars and also improve the overall sensitivity again of insulin to land. There was a study done at the Western University of Health Sciences in California, and they found that if you consume cinnamon, it had a statistical drastic difference in reducing sugar levels in the blood and also LDL and also triglycerides. Cinnamon consumption also helped to raise good cholesterol. So again, see, do you notice how it doesn't just do one thing? It's not just going to fix your sugars. It helps the whole cellular metabolism to turn around, so we see effects with blood pressure, triglycerides, cholesterols, etc. The amazing benefit about cinnamon is that it's very easy to use. You can add it to either smoothies or to your tea. You can also get a more concentrated form of it called cinnamon essential oil and simply put it either 1 or 2 drops into, again, food or tea, or you can take it and put it into an empty veggie capsule and swallow it on a daily basis. Typically 2 or 3 drops 2 or 3 times a day has been helpful. Thirdly, there was a study published in the Journal of Research and Medicinal Sciences that found that a very basic omega-3 oil, these are like your classic sort of fish and or plant oils, have been shown to help the insulin receptor become detoxified. Partly the reason for that is the membrane itself that surrounds and protects the receptor and the insulin is made of fat. And if these fats are off balance in their omega-3 to 6 ratio, they become inflamed, and the inflammation overflows the receptor and so somewhat blunts it. The Journal of Research in Medicinal Sciences found that if you use fish oil at about 1,000 milligrams per day, there was a significant reduction in blood sugar and also in the insulin sensitivity and an effect at reducing inflammation. Number 4, alpha-lipoic acid. It is an antioxidant that actually helps to turn glucose into fuel once it gets into the body. It has been shown to improve the insulin sensitivity and reduce the symptoms of a lot of what type 2 diabetics deal with: neuropathies, weakness, pain, numbness, tingling, etc. Alpha-lipoic acid is found in food sources, specifically high in broccoli, spinach, and Brussels sprouts, but most of the time you're going to need to take an alpha-lipoic acid supplement, which will help increase the productivity of it within your body and break that insulin receptor. Number 5, and a great one, especially if you've been struggling with type 2 diabetes, bitter melon extract. Bitter melon extract in studies has been shown to reduce not only just the symptoms of diabetes, but again, enhance the insulin resistance, increase the sugar transport across the cell membrane, which opens up the glucose transport, and it also has been shown to drastically lower blood sugar in near fasting states. I'd also like to point out that we don't just want to open up the receptor, but we also want to make sure that those toxins are reduced in our exposure. So remember, the number one way to get toxins out of your body is to stop applying them to you. So this requires a lifestyle change with the products you use, everything from shampoos to deodorants to lotions to makeup, also to the chemicals you use around your house with what you clean your house with. Also, we got to look into the aspect of how you store and cook your food. A lot of metals are found, aluminum specifically, in the aluminum foils that we wrap our food in when we cook, or on the baking sheets, or in our pots and pans. We also find aluminum in our deodorants, and we find that mercury is again found in the fish that we eat, and also the fillings in our mouth, and potentially in the vaccinations that you received throughout your life. So number 1 is reduce the exposure. Number 2 is use natural chelators. 3 top chelators that you may even have inside of your house that help to pull heavy metals include green tea extracts. The catechins inside of green tea have been found to help chelate the free radicals that are found in heavy metals. Quercetin, which is also a great natural antihistamine, has the ability to inhibit the absorption of iron and reduce ferritin. Curcumin has the ability to chelate both iron and other heavy metals. And you may even have to go deeper and seek some professional advice. A lot of holistic physicians use things like zeolites or EDTA, activated charcoals, or bentonite clays, and they can come up with a routine that can help you to target your specific toxins. How do we see people get rid of diabetes in 90 days? Address the toxic load. Get tested, develop a treatment plan specific to the elimination program. Follow that in combination with your diet, and your diabetes can be gone in as little as 90 days, sometimes 6 months. Hopefully you found today to be helpful. Make sure you visit AskDrOrange.com for more information and as a way to connect with us. And again, if you know someone or you're currently struggling with hypothyroid issues, if you're having difficulty losing weight, if your energy crashes a lot, if your hair is brittle, if your skin is dry, might be your thyroid, a free webinar Saturday, May 1st at 10 a.m. on solving hypothyroid issues. You can register right now by calling 704-906-2094. The number again, 704-906-2094. It's the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. I'll see you guys next week.